So we need to explain to people that the anatomy book was a joint effort between you and Christopher Dean.
Well, it actually started with me, and it started with Lucy.
Oh,
Hey.
this is the impact of Lucy that I should have talked about when I was in Tempe last week.
Well, it was also why they should have invited me to come and talk in Tempe last week, because yeah, no, because what happened, and the anatomy book predates the brains and guts hypothesis. Is again, I have always had this interest in teaching and communication and all. And when the descriptions of Lucy came out, and there was that, beautiful big monographic edition of American Journal of Physical Anthropology that described everything. Even though I had a PhD in anatomy, didn't really know what they were talking about.
Right.
I just didn't understand the anatomical jargon. And I thought, well, if I don't understand this, there's a lot of anthropologists out there that are going to be struggling the same way that I did.
Right.
So what I did was one weekend, I sat down and wrote a book proposal. And, when I was trying...
The book was called eventually An Introduction to Human
Evolutionary Anatomy.
Right.
Yeah, and so I, zipped off this book proposal. I remember putting it in the post box on Sunday afternoon. Right. And on Monday, I got a call from Academic Press. Right. And my first response was, gee, I'm impressed with the Postal Service. And then, they were terribly interested in it, because at that point, unbeknownst to me, they were interested in developing a series of handbooks.
Right.
And I think the initial working title was The Handbook of Human Evolutionary Anatomy. And and then, after I had a talk with Andrew Richford, who was the editor at the point, I began to panic about what I'd gotten myself into.
Right.
Because this was a huge undertaking. And that's when Christopher Dean was one of my colleagues at UCL by that time. And I was talking with him about it. And it just happened to hit both of our careers at the time when we thought it was a good idea. So he'd said he'd come in and do everything from the neck up. And I did everything from the neck down. And that's why there's a lot on the neck in the book. Because we got it from both directions.
Double, okay. But I think we need to explain to people that that there is the anatomy of modern humans. And then there is anatomy which is sort of peculiar to hominins.
Yeah.
In other words, if you just use the anatomy of modern humans, there's a lot of terminology which we use in paleoanthropology, which would not be used by a human anatomist. And there's a lot of morphology. I mean, something like Paranthropus boisei looks as if it's come from Mars, and most of the way that you would describe a modern human skull or cranium just wouldn't work for that. So this was an absolutely amazingly brilliant idea. What stage in your career were you when you did this?
Well, many people thought I was much too young.
This is a polite way of me introducing this, because whether they thought you were much too young or not, it was an amazing book
Well, I mean, to put it into perspective, and again, I don't want a Michael Day bash, but I have a letter of reference that he had done for the publisher about the book, saying I wasn't capable of doing it.
Ooh, okay.
And it wasn't sent to me with his name on it. but there was enough identifying information in there. I know who it came from. And admittedly, I probably wasn't qualified for doing it. But I had a very strong feeling that it was needed in the field. There was a hole in the field for it. There was nothing else like it.
Sure.
And
yeah, but the book is more than a textbook. I mean, the book is cited quite often in research papers because there is information in the book which is sort of research level information. It's not just it's not just an anatomy book. It's about the science underlying that.
Well, Chris and I tried. And before we go any further, we should probably let everybody know that you were a huge help in this, and you read the whole thing for us.
Really?
Yeah, you may have forgotten this, but both Chris and I were, terribly thankful to you for helping us out with it.
Wow. Okay. So I remember seeing the book, and it's one of these things. Why the hell didn't I think of that myself?
Yeah, I remember you saying that. Probably Chris and I would have less, gray hair if the three of us had done it rather than just this. But
no. I mean, I think it's absolutely brilliant. So, and that became, I don't know what the situation is now. I mean, I certainly recommend it to students, but that became the Bible, not for. Because most sort of books about human evolution, they focused on systematics. And that book didn't really focus on systematics.
Well, I mean, Chris and I took a very definite decision about that before we started writing it.
Mm.
And what one of the models for it was the Napier and Napier Handbook of Living Primates. And that's actually why we went to academic press.
Oh, that's interesting. And of course, John Napier was in London and
Crewe was at the museum, yeah. And what I felt, the reason I sent my proposal to academic press was I thought any press that could keep a book in print for 20 years was somebody I wanted to work with.
Very sensible.
Yeah, but the staying power of the Handbook of Living Primates was it was descriptive. They didn't take an interpretation angle on it. And Chris and I decided at the outset that we didn't want to age the book by taking any type of a theoretical stance in it. So it was entirely descriptive. But then Chris, of course, was doing all his research in Paracamata and the dentition at the time. And there's a lot of my allometry in it. So
we should explain that the Chris was in the anatomy department of University College Hospital and Medical School, and he was across the road, but nonetheless he was in the same institution.
Right, and we had similar research interests, so we had a nice supportive group of people at the time, and we used to have breakfast every morning together in the nurses' dining room. And sometimes we talked about the book, sometimes we didn't, but it actually kept us both active and going with it. But both of us look back at it now and wonder how we ever wrote the thing.
I mean, I still look at my copy thinking, how the hell did they put this together? The really important decision that you made was just to have you and Chris. And so, in other words, you didn't have to please anybody else other than each other.
Yeah. And it was one of those very happy working relationships. We never argued, but whatever. But the book took 4 years, and the 4th year was the illustrations, because the publisher didn't want to put money into the illustrations until they were sure we were going to produce the text. So, but it was a very happy time for both of us. but neither of us wanted to do a revision. No, we kept saying that if we did do a revision, it was going to be in the south of France.
Okay.
And the academic press wasn't willing to put up the money. In fact, the last serious conversation we had with them about it, we said if they would buy out our teaching for 6 months, 6 months each, we would do a revision. And they weren't willing to put that amount of money into it.
Okay. Well, they're lost, but there we are.
Well, what we decided is it has its place in history. And it's up to, some of our younger colleagues to do something similar or not, as the case may be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So just remind me when it was published.
The handbook was published in 1990, I think.
And so you were still at University College in 2005.
Right.